Some things on the internet are not meant to be found. They lurk in the shadows, waiting.
I've been doing this long enough to know that certain places attract certain kinds of stories. Summer camps, abandoned hospitals, small towns with one road in and one road out, and spring break destinations, more than almost anywhere else, have a frequency to them that I can't explain and can't ignore. Some of you were here for the summer camp series. This is worse. Here's what I've come to understand about spring break after going through more accounts than I can count. It's a liminal space. That's the academic term, a threshold, a place between places, a time between times. Normal rules don't apply. You're not at home, but you're not really anywhere else either. You're untethered. And when you're untethered, you stop listening to the instincts that keep you safe. You stop noticing the things you'd normally notice. Spring break is basically a factory for bad decisions. But sometimes the bad decision isn't yours. Sometimes it finds you. I've spoken to survivors. I've read accounts that were sent to me privately, things people were too afraid to post publicly. I've cross-referenced details across stories from different states, different years, different groups of people who never knew each other. And I keep finding the same shapes in the dark. 3 stories, each one worse than the last. I'm giving you a warning on the third one specifically. I debated whether to include it at all, but you need to hear it. Let's start with story 1. Pay attention to the details. They matter later. The first story belongs to a girl named Kayla, 20 years old, sophomore year, University of Tennessee. She'd done the responsible thing her freshman year, stayed on campus, worked her part-time job, watched everyone else's spring break photos roll in from a dorm room that smelled like instant noodles and regret. So when her roommate Bree started planning a trip to Panama City Beach in January, Kayla didn't hesitate for a single second. 6 of them drove down in 2 cars. Kayla, Bree, their friend Megan, and 3 guys from their friend group, Tyler, Dom, and a boy everyone called Sketch because nobody, including Sketch, could remember how the nickname started. They left at 4 in the morning to beat traffic, gas station snacks piled in the back seat. A playlist Bree had spent 2 weeks building queued up and ready. Kayla told me that somewhere around the Georgia border, with the sun just starting to come up and Megan asleep on her shoulder, and a song she loved bleeding through the speakers, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Like everything was exactly right. They'd rented a condo 2 blocks from the beach. Nothing fancy. The kind of place with plasticky furniture and a shower that took 4 minutes to get warm, but it had a balcony, and they could hear the ocean and nobody cared about anything else. First night, they walked the strip, found a place with outdoor speakers and cheap food, stayed out until 2 in the morning just talking. Tyler tried to teach Megan to 2-step on the sidewalk. Dom lost his flip-flop in a storm drain and walked back barefoot, furious, while everyone else couldn't breathe from laughing. "This is the best trip I've ever taken," Kayla told Bree that night, back on the balcony. "It's the only trip you've ever taken," Bree said. Exactly. There were 2 things Kayla noticed that she didn't think about until later. The first was the door to their condo. The deadbolt didn't catch right. You had to lift the handle slightly well. You turned the key, and even then it felt uncertain, like a promise you weren't sure someone intended to keep. Sketch joked that he'd seen scarier security at a middle school dance. Everyone laughed. The second thing was a man on the beach their first morning. Older, standing at the waterline, fully dressed in dark clothing despite the heat. He wasn't swimming. He wasn't walking. He was just watching them. And when Kayla looked directly at him, he didn't look away. Night 2 was when the trip changed. They'd spent the day on the beach, sunburned and happy, and by 10 o'clock most of the group had gone inside. Kayla and Bree stayed on the balcony with the last of a bottle of wine, talking about nothing important, classes, a boy Bree liked, plans for the summer. The ocean was loud and dark and beautiful. 2 days ago, they'd been laughing in this same spot without a thing in the world to worry about. That version of the trip ended around midnight. Kayla heard it first. A sound from the condo below theirs. Not music, not a TV, but something rhythmic and low, almost like a voice, but not quite. She figured it was nothing. Went inside, went to bed. Woke up at 2 a.m. with the feeling that someone had just been standing over her. The sound was still going. She lay still for a long time, listening. It had a pattern: 3 beats, a pause, 3 beats, a pause, and it was coming through the floor directly beneath her bed. She told herself it was pipes. Old buildings make noise. She almost had herself convinced. Then Megan's voice came from across the room, barely a whisper. "You hear that too, right?" They didn't sleep again that night. By morning, Kayla had almost rationalized it away. But Sketch hadn't come home. He turned up 6 hours later, walking up the beach alone, shoes in his hand, eyes somewhere else entirely. When they asked where he'd been, he said he'd gone for a walk and lost track of time. When Tyler pointed out he'd been gone since 11 the night before, Sketch just looked at him for a moment and said, "That doesn't sound right." Then he went inside and slept for 14 hours. He didn't talk about that night for the rest of the trip. Not once. The last night, Kayla woke to the sound of the condo door opening. The broken deadbolt, the one that needed the handle lifted just right. She heard it click, heard the door swing, heard, very clearly, footsteps move across the main room and stop outside her bedroom door. And that's when she heard it again. 3 beats. A pause. 3 beats. From inside the room. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. The footsteps retreated after what felt like an hour, but was probably 40 seconds. The front door opened and closed. When she finally got up, hands shaking, and checked the condo, nothing. No one. Dom and Tyler were asleep. Bree hadn't moved. Sketch's door was shut. In the morning, there was sand on the floor just inside the front door. A trail of it, leading to her room and back. Nobody had been to the beach since the afternoon before. The man from the waterline. She never saw him again. She doesn't know if he was connected. She doesn't know if any of it was connected. That's the part that never left her. Not the fear, but the not knowing. She still lifts the handle slightly when she turns a deadbolt. Every single time, they left a day early. Nobody said it out loud. Bree just started packing, and everyone else followed, and by 9 in the morning they were loading the cars in silence. The drive home felt nothing like the drive down. No playlist. Sketch slept the entire way. Kayla reported the broken lock to the rental company. They apologized and offered a discount on a future booking. She never found out who had been in the unit below theirs. She never found out where Sketch really went that night, because 6 months later she tried to bring it up, and he looked at her with complete sincerity and said he genuinely didn't know what she was talking about. She believed him. That was the worst part. I thought Kayla's story was a one-time thing, the kind of experience that feels supernatural and probably isn't, the kind that lives in the space between explanation and imagination. Then I started hearing from other people. People who'd been to different places, different states, similar time of year. And their stories rhymed with hers in ways I couldn't account for. Story 2 happened in Tennessee. Different people entirely. But one detail was identical. And when I noticed it, I went back and read Kayla's account 3 more times. Marcus was 24 and the kind of person who plans things carefully. Not a spontaneous guy. He'd tell you that himself. So when he decided to take a solo road trip over spring break, driving from Nashville down to a lake cabin he'd rented in rural Tennessee, he'd researched it for 3 weeks. Read the reviews, check the weather, map 2 alternate routes. He was prepared. He almost didn't book it at all. One review, buried under dozens of 5 stars, gave the property 2 out of 5 and said only, "Beautiful area. Don't ask the neighbors about the water." No further explanation. The account had no other reviews, no profile photo. Marcus screenshot it, thought about it for a day, and then booked anyway. He called his mom from the car, 2 hours into the drive. She asked if he was sure he wanted to go alone, and he said yes. He needed the quiet, and she said she understood, and there was a pause where they both just existed on the line together for a second before she said, "Call me when you get there," in the specific tone mothers use when they mean something more than the words that he got there at dusk. The cabin was genuinely beautiful, wood-paneled walls, a porch that faced the water, trees so dense on 3 sides they felt like walls. The lake was still and dark and reflected the sky perfectly. Marcus stood on the porch with a cup of coffee and felt his shoulders drop for the first